Well, looks like I got bored on the marketplace again, huh? I found this iMac G3 for free on Marketplace and traveled an hour and a half to pick it up. The only stipulation is, well, they weren't sure if it actually worked. I guess it sat around for a while because they didn't know the history and it's in pretty rough shape. A lot of people in the early 2000s remember using these in school, however I just didn't have the same experience. Instead I used Windows 98 and later on XP. We wrote documents to floppy disks and I honestly felt pretty left out. Anyways, now that it's set up, let's try to power it on and see what we got. Jesus. Oh, that's nice. We actually had a pretty loud startup. Hopefully it's not a bad sign, it's just a CRT doing CRT things. Looks like we got Mac OS 9.2, which I do believe is the latest version of OS 9 Apple released before 10. After the startup, we get a message about time and date not set, so the timekeeping battery is most likely bad. There doesn't appear to be really many files or programs pretty much anywhere I looked. It's almost as if the computer was completely reset before I got it, which makes sense, although I was told I didn't even know if it worked. There are a couple of small things loaded that I think came from the factory, like Stuffit Expander, DVD autoplay extensions, and a couple other small things like that. This iMac sold with a 10GB hard drive, 400MHz CPU, and 128MB of RAM, although this one has been upgraded to 192MB of RAM. Not exactly the most impressive specs even for the time period, however I don't blame it considering the whole system is passively cooled. That's right, not a single fan cools this unit. When heat builds up in the system, it vents out the top where the handle is and pulls core out from the bottom. However, this wasn't exactly always effective as the system's heat is usually what caused these systems' demise. Apple has also been pretty decent about optimizing software for their hardware, and it's no exception here, even if they purposely did kill OS 9 quickly in favor of OS 10. I wonder if I can get Tiger to run on it. Maybe in a future video. Now that I've got everything set up, I really want to make the system mine. First, I'm going to start fixing the time and date. It feels kind of wrong setting the date to 2022 on a system made before the new millennium. I don't particularly like the wallpaper, especially that orange color. I remember my dad always had the family photos as the wallpaper on Old Geezer back in the day, so I'll do something similar with a picture of me and my girlfriend. I'll just plug in a USB with the photo of us and copy it over. Oh, well, it failed. And locked the whole system up. That's not a good sign. Maybe I'll restart and try again. It locked up again. It seems like anytime I try to write data to the disk, it crashes the system. I'll try one more time. I actually got it to work this time, but it struggled way more than I would like. Usually it's a sign of a failing hard disk, which wouldn't surprise me considering the age. I want to play some games on it, so maybe I'll just try the disk drive. Well, that doesn't work either. In fact, it doesn't even recognize it has one in the system at all. I tried copying some games over from the USB and did immediately crash the system. Numerous attempts gave me the same exact result. I decided to run a hard disk checker and it told me there were no issues detected, which makes me think maybe we have a USB bus line issue? I'm not really sure. I wasn't really wanting to disassemble the system given I'm pretty unfamiliar with the system, but I'm not really sure I have a choice at this point. There are too many things broken for me not to. I noticed there were some loose plastic pieces in the casing anyway, so it'll be a good time to clean those out. These systems were pretty user serviceable. On the bottom, we actually have an access port for some RAM expansion and an airport card. There are only a few screws holding the bottom panel on, one of which is missing. After getting the bottom plastic panel off, we need to get this shield off. From what I've read, this serves as a shield for interference from the CRT, which makes sense. After removing the shield, we can see the mainboard is actually really clean. I'm not really surprised considering it is a fanless computer. I did notice that there were several more screws missing in here as well. Someone has definitely opened the system up before, and my guess was probably for the DVD drive. Speaking of, here it is completely unplugged. Well, no wonder it didn't detect a drive. I decided to unplug the cable the rest of the way to inspect the pins of the drives, as someone may have bent them when plugging this tight cable back in. I didn't see any damage anywhere, so I decided to put it back together and set it up. Jeez, look at all this debris. Let's go ahead and get that cleaned up. After powering it on this time, it makes some odd noises and gave me a memory error on boot, which is new. Okay, well it says a memory test detected a problem. It took a little longer to boot this time, but it does indeed detect the DVD drive. I tried to put a disc in, which was my girlfriend's copy of Scrubs, please don't kill me, but it still didn't want to take the disc. At this point, I assumed it had to be some sort of detection issue with the drive, because the disk drive definitely powered up when the system booted. I decided to try to copy another file off of the USB, and it did actually work this time.
That's a first.
In fact, I noticed the whole system seems to be more responsive after reseating the data connector. Maybe I had some corrosion on the connector and reseating it restored some missed connections. I decided to reopen the system and investigate the DVD drive even further. I went ahead and pulled the DVD drive apart and found one of the plastic pieces that triggered the drive were completely detached. I went ahead and reattached it and cleaned the drive. I reassembled the system and the memory error from earlier was gone and the drive worked. Well, sort of. It barely pulled the disk in and refused to eject it once it did. I pulled the drive back apart and noticed the rubber rollers were slipping on the metal rod they went on. I went ahead and applied a small dab of superglue to the rollers to prevent them from slipping anymore. I also twisted the drive belt to give it some extra tension to move the rollers a little bit better, which is not a permanent fix, but it'll be good enough before I can order a replacement drive. These were a pretty common failure, so finding a used replacement may be tough anymore. After my somewhat sketchy of a fix, we actually have a drive that works just enough to get me by. I noticed that after reassembly, the speakers sound absolutely terrible. I wanted to look into it a little bit further, but I was getting a little impatient. Honestly, I just wanted to get some games installed and actually use the system, so I just left it alone for the time being. Most of the games are abandonware, so I just downloaded some off of Macintosh repository and moved them off the USB. And I forgot how slow USB 1.1 was. 700 kilobytes a second was my transfer speed. I got Doom to run with a free virtual DVD mounting program, and it was very fun to play. This port of Doom's controls are a little funky, but easy enough to learn. I also downloaded Civilization 2. While it's definitely not as graphically beautiful as today's Civilization games, it is definitely still a fun simulation game, even today. Old games never do get old, do they? After moving a couple games from one computer to the other, I started to remember this iMac actually has an Ethernet port. I started to think maybe I can get internet off of it. I plugged it in, opened Internet Explorer 5, and sure enough, Google loaded right up. But that was about it. No other websites would work, and they just don't support the modern security levels, JavaScript, and HTML5 uses that we take advantage of today. Maybe I can get it to work a different way, but that's for another video. While fiddling with the system, I had many cool ideas for future videos, so definitely stay tuned. That being said, thanks for watching. I had a lot of fun with this out of the blue project, and I hope you enjoyed the ride with me. If you want to support me for future videos, consider subscribing and hitting that like button to help get the algorithm on my side. Once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.